Bye-bye, Boyd, take 22.
What is the one word that comes to mind when you think of Commissioner Boyd?
The one word that comes to mind would be servant.
Energy.
Dynamic.
Empowering.
I would say passionate.
I'm reflective on something that Jesus said, how can you lead unless you serve? He is a true leader.
We are Team Tennessee! We are Team Tennessee! We are Team Tennessee!
When you think about Randy Boyd, you think about somebody who will always give you every ounce of energy they have, who is going to be relentlessly optimistic, and then always focused on what's the target. And the great thing about being with Randy is he takes that energy and that intelligence and that optimistic view of life and always turns it into results.
Nothing says commitment, right, like a tattoo. So, Governor, we're committed. Team Tennessee tattoo.
I'm expecting to see that tattoo next week as well, so if it's a temporary one, we'll find out.
Team Tennessee, I think, is such an awesome phrase because it's just two simple words, but I think it just invokes this idea that there's no limit to what we can do if we just all work together and we don't care who gets the credit for it.
An anthem. It is a major call to action for all of us to stay anchored and understand exactly the importance of being a team.
You know, my favorite history of Tennessee is by Wilma Stokely Dykeman, and it's just called Tennessee, not a very creative name title. But a line that has always kind of stuck with me from that book goes a little something like, you know, in Tennessee, the people are as much a part of the land as the land is a part of them. I've always found that to be very profound. And kind of what Team Tennessee means to me is, you know, you look at our department, and you know, we've got people from West Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, and East Tennessee, and you know, even though we come from geographically distinct areas, we're still Tennesseans, and we're all working towards our dreams of making our home, which is important to us, better.
Remember when we started the Drive to 55 a few years ago, it was going to be a big challenge. We had to go from 32% to 55% post-secondary attainment by the year 2025. And I remember somebody saying to me one time, says, you know, this is kind of like your moonshot, the state of Tennessee's moonshot. Back, you know, thinking back to the space days and the race to the moon and all the things that went into that and the big challenge and how the whole nation came together to make that happen. I think that's true about the Drive to 55. It is going to take all of us working together. And the same thing I think is true about our rural challenge. If we're going to go to zero distress counties and lift everybody up, if we're going to really have that rural renaissance that I believe will be in our future, it's going to take all 6.6 million Tennesseans working together. But I remember when somebody talked to me about that moonshot back on the Drive to 55, it reminded me of a movie that I saw. Some of you have seen this movie, Apollo 13 with, it was the movie with Jim Lovell, and Tom Hanks playing Jim Lovell. Everybody's seen the movie. The opening scene starts with Tom Hanks with his wife laying in a lounge chair, looking up at the stars, looking up at the moon. And at that moment, Neil Armstrong is landing or walking on the moon. And Tom Hanks looks over at his wife and he says, you know, one day they're going to write the history of our race to the moon. And the history will be all about all the technology and the rocket science, and literally rocket science and all the things we had to do to get there. But you know, the truth is, it wasn't about any of that. One day we just woke up and decided to go. It was just a decision of will. So when I think about the Drive to 55, I think about our rural challenge, this is not even rocket science. It's literally just a decision of will. And if 6.6 million Tennesseans decide to do something, nothing's going to stop us.
Every single person in this great state matters, and he's proven that.
He taught me to never give up because of something that someone said, and to use that as motivation to do it the best way possible, and that you can never, ever beat someone who doesn't give up. And I will tell you that Randy Boyd never gives up, and that is something that inspires me, is to never quit, never give up on something that I really care about and something that I believe in.
I would like to thank Commissioner Boyd for his service here for the past 2 years. I think he is an extraordinary leader, and I think he's done a lot of great things in bringing not only our department together and
kind of teaching us the way we should service our customers and clients, but also the way we should treat our stakeholders and the way that we should treat each other as co-workers. Plus, he's a pretty doggone good salesperson.
People ask me sometimes, well, isn't it hard selling the state of Tennessee? And I always tell them, and some of you may know this, but for a career, when I'm not doing this, I've been selling an invisible fence all my life. And so I always tell them, you know, if you can sell an invisible fence for a bit living, you can sell the state of Tennessee.
So one of the things I'll miss about having Randy work with us here is the way that he always called me boss. Now, I think for most people, they actually have had a boss before, but I don't think Randy's ever had a boss in his life before. So he always said boss with a little twinkle in his eye, like it gave him sort of a chuckle to actually have a boss and to call someone that. So I'll miss that. I'll also miss getting emails from him at 3 in the morning and feeling guilty when I woke up at 6 that I haven't replied to him for 3 hours.
You know, the first thing I noticed about him was he had a very strong sock game. And I like that. And then the next thing I noticed was that he didn't wear undershirts, which was a power move. And, but you know, those were first impressions. But then, you know, as I got to know him, the one thing that kind of stood out to me about him was that he was very other focused. You know, I feel like in this world we're programmed to be very, you know, centric on ourselves. You know, how many likes can I get on Instagram? How many, you know, retweets can I get for this thing? It's all about me, 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 me. And he's kind of the exception to that. He's about we instead of me. And that's hard to find in this world. And I put a lot of stock in that. And I hope one day that I can be at the level where he's at, where he's focused on others rather than himself. And I've already begun that process. I've thrown out all of my undershirts. It's a good step one.
The one thing that I noticed about him from day one is he makes it a point to come up to people and let us know how much he appreciates us. Just no matter what you're doing in the department, you just feel like he notices you and he acknowledges you, and you just have no idea how much that means to people. Very appreciative of the Commissioner for making this an absolutely wonderful place to come to work the past 2 years.
I just know that whoever's next has some big shoes to fill.